face from the image. Anyway, so to get started, basically in your Steam, you're going to install Company of Heroes 3. You're going to go in your wherever your Steam is installed. So for me, it's going to be Program Files, Steam. Is this? Oh, it's at the top. Oh, it's by date, not okay. Steam Apps, Common, and right now for me this is in codev closed because I'm using this is the preview test build, but for everyone else it's just going to say Company of Heroes 3. Double click on the folder, and you're going to want to kind of scroll down in the files here until you find essenceeditor.exe, and you're definitely going to want to send this to your desktop, make a shortcut, whatever, pin it to your taskbar down here. So yeah, we're just going to go ahead and open this up. And then you're going to get this beautiful little loading screen here. And when you open this up for the first time, this should be blank. These are all your recent maps you've opened, recent mods you've made. Because this is not just the mapping thing, it's the editor as well. So it's like making your mod, making your skin. So the first thing you're going to want to do is create a new mod. So for making a map, you're going to want to go here to Scenario. I'm going to click Next. And you're going to come up with a scenario name. If you know what you're doing, title this whatever it is. If you're Physio, I wish you could sub. I just got to stream more. But yeah, so you're going to want to create your scenario name. If you know you're converting a map that you've already made before, go ahead, put that in there. But for me, we're just going to call this simple Twitch map. And then display name, I think you can change this after. I honestly have just been duplicating it to minimize, any risk of bugs, things like that. And you have two options here. You can create a new map, or you can open one of the 14 maps that are in Company of Heroes 3. These are only going to be the multiplayer versions. You're not going to be able to open campaign maps right now. So you can see for 8 players, we've got Mignano Gap, Winterline, Locula, Gazala. I think there's another one. Oh, well, it's Mignano Gap, but smaller. So you got some 4-player maps, and you got your 2-player maps here. So if you're... I would say this is definitely a great tool to use as you're learning the tool. How do they do things in Co3 that you... the process is different between Co3 and Co2. So the two most competitive 1v1 maps are going to be Road to Tunis and Twin Beaches. Anything else, I don't know. Some of the 2v2 maps are probably pretty good, but the 3s and 4s, I honestly have no idea. But I'm going to go ahead and create a new map. And instead of hitting next and generating your map, you're going to want to go to advanced, because then you're going to get this familiar screen that's going to let you customize the size of your map. So you're going to want to keep it at multiplayer scenario. Well, this is for kind of the Master League, people trying to make a competitive map. It's possible, I think, to make like single player scenarios where you do complex coding and make your own story. I don't know how to do that. I'm just here to show you how to make a map for, competitive play. I wouldn't touch this. Not sure what this does. This chunk size, the default is 16. I don't know exactly what this does, but I know it's related to tiling, where the previous chunk size in Co1 and Co2 was 32. So that was capping the amount of tiles you can have in a 32-meter zone by, I think the limit was 9 or 8. But now they've shrunk that limit to 16, so you can just effectively fit more different tiles in the twice the amount of space. I think I'm saying that right. I don't know. Math is hard. And then this is going to be the most important part here, your terrain size. So I always like to pull out my phone, go on my calculator, and figure out how many 32 meter chunks these are, because it's just easier to measure in those 32 millimeter chunks. So I've found that the majority of, hold on, I wrote a note here somewhere. So a lot of the maps in 1v1 are a 10 by 10 square of like playable area. That's 320 by 320. But you know, when you go in there, because you have the smaller, you have the interactivity zone you've got to put in there, which is 32 or 64 meters. A lot of times you have stuff on the sides that kind of you know, shrinks the combat area a bit. You might have a round map, so you don't have a perfectly square sort of thing. But the same kind of rules apply. You want to have about 64 meters of extra terrain size beyond your playable area. So I made a note. Sorry, this is why it's a little rough on the stream. It's not as precise as a YouTube video with all the fancy editing tricks. Map making. Okay. So I figured this out earlier. So Road to Tunis and Twin Beaches are both a terrain size of 608. So let's just, as a experiment, just stick with that. So 608 divided by 32 is 19. Seems kind of big. So they're 19 32 meter chunks. And then the playable area is actually a lot smaller. So maybe disregard that about the 64 meter rule. So 384 by 384. And you'll see that 384 minus 64 is 320. So that's assuming you have a 64 meter interactivity zone where units spawn in and then come into the map. It's where you'll still kind of see the edge of the map without any kind of visual obstruction, but you know, your units aren't able to pass through there. This has an impact on minimap size. So I know there's been a few people out there saying, oh, the minimaps are too small. You don't have to necessarily abide by this rule. By the 32 or by the 64 meter boundary zone of interactivity layer. But just for the sake of things, we'll go into the playable area here. 32 meters. So this is going to give you that nice 10 by 10 grid. But I'm losing track here. Yeah, so we want to actually keep it at 384. And then we get the 10 by 10 grid with that interactivity zone. Default height. And one last thing. You can actually rescale and resize your map. So this terrain size and playable area, it's not like in Code 2 where you have to remake the whole thing if you realize you mess it up. You can actually go in and rescale your playable area and terrain size. Cell size, I wouldn't touch this. Default height, you can set this to anything you want. I don't think it really impacts how the game plays, but keep it manageable. You know, maybe if you want to have a map with lots of hills and valleys, you'd set it to something like 20 or 30, but the default is 10. For a competitive map, that's probably all you really need. And then, of course, starting positions auto-generates them, which is actually less, it isn't as useful. They generate the wrong kind of HQ sectors or HQ buildings, but they might fix that, they might not sure. But anyway, now that we've got everything sorted out, we've got a kind of a standard 1 versus 1 size of map. We haven't changed anything here because we're not making anything too crazy. Going to go ahead and click OK. And then it saves the options. We click Next. And then you can just type in your mod description. You can do this later too. You can choose your language here. I don't know about other language support in the World Builder. I just, growing up American, I'm an Anglophone. Don't really speak anything other than English, some Spanish, some German. But Yeah, English is definitely, if you can speak English, you know, Co3 is definitely, you're not going to have an issue there. Um, so then you can actually save your map anywhere you want. I created a easy to get to folder in my documents folder. Just, you know, Co3 maps. You can save this anywhere you want. Definitely do it somewhere that's easy to get to. Your desktop, your documents, your My Games folder, whatever. Doesn't matter. So I'm going to pick Co3 maps. I'm going to hit finish. And then the editor is going to appear. Like magic, it's going to render. And this is going to be your default view. So basically, if you've come from Company of Heroes 2 or Company of Heroes 1, you're gonna, you know, it looks shocking. You're gonna have some advantage if you've come from Age of Empires 4. This editor is almost identical to Age of Empires 4. There's just a few differences in, you know, just because the games are different, right? Like they don't have territory sectors. So the first thing that I notice is I hate how small the render window is here. I want a bigger render window. So you can see this right here is actually the cutoff here of this this window. So I'm going to go ahead and slide this over right. It was just a little too far. Right there. Bigger render window. You can shrink this as well. This Asset Explorer, when you're making a map, you really don't need this. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that out. And all of a sudden, I've got all this real estate. So now we've like doubled the size of our render viewer, okay? The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off atmosphere fog. It's kind of annoying, especially when you're first starting out. So as you can see, I've got this nice 32 meter grid here. And you can see it's 10 by 10 if we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Well, sorry, this is 12 by 12. Interactivity layer shrinks it down to 10 by 10. I keep forgetting. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to open scenario. When you first open this, I don't know if these lines will render, but you're not going to have a 32 meter grid. You're actually going to have a 10 meter grid. And maybe down the line, that's good for you. But when you first start out, when you're kind of plopping territory down, plopping HQ sectors, figuring out shot blockers and pathing, you want the bigger grid. So you're going to go to scenario. You're going to go all the way down to overlays. And you're going to mouse over here. And, okay, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Yeah, so this is, I do have this selected. The default's going to be none. So you're going to get this scary texture. So what you want to do to get that 32 meter grid, you want to go to Tools, Settings, and you're going to go here down to Render Settings. And the one good thing about this tool is that you can change how everything looks, basically. A lot of the what you have in here is also available up in here, like your grid. This makes a different kind of grid that isn't the standard XZ grid. You can kind of faintly see it there, but you tilt the camera, you'll see it better. But you're going to want to go your render settings. You're going to want to scroll down until you hit render. No, it's scenario settings. Right? Yeah. Okay, scenario settings. So this is really where you can customize the look of your editor. I'm just leaving things at default. I don't really have time to mess with it, but you can definitely choose the way colors appear, different things. You can choose what is or isn't rendered, but I'm scrolling down to overlay. This is super important. And what you're going to want to do, am I right? Yeah, overlay. Okay, here's the important thing. Overlay grid units. The default is going to be set to 10. So if I hit reset, there we go, 10. Maybe this is different for the actual build of Co3, but I doubt it. Well, actually, I just have no idea. But you're going to want to set that to 32. Close. And then scenario, overlays, grid lines. You don't want the grid. You get this checkerboard. That really threw me off. The first time I opened this thing, turned that on, I spent probably 20 minutes trying to figure out how to turn it off. But you want just the regular grid. Now, a shortcut I'd recommend, you can right click up here and add multiple panels. You want to add your scenario editor overlay, and that's going to put a lot of that overlay menu from Cotu's World Builder up top here for you. So you got your path map, your territory maps, you have, what else is useful? You have interactivity map, and you got grid, and you have impasse. So this is, you really want to turn this on and leave it up here. You can kind of move this stuff around, but this over here really isn't that important. You're really going to want to focus on the overlay bit, and then these bits are a bit more important, but not too important. There's a lot of redundancy here. You can access stuff here, access stuff here. So what's next? So you got your grid laid out, and let's say we want to paint that interactivity zone. So in Cotu, the easiest way to do this was to put on a couple, some splines. So the way you're going to do that in Company of Heroes 3 is you're very dependent on the scenario editor here. Or sorry, the scenario tree. This is called the scenario tree. So this is going to generate everything like a Windows folder, right? So you see here, you got your starting territories, you have starting position, and you have map entry point. Those are the auto-generated starting positions. I like to make a new folder, and I'm gonna call it I don't know, spline outline. Okay, and then you have it set as default parents. That means any new thing you put on the render window in your map is going to appear in this folder. So we right click, we hit add. We can add all sorts of things, but we're going to scroll down or just type spline. Hit OK. It's going to generate a spline here. Now this spline is empty. It doesn't do anything. It has 4 control points, and we can we can hit spacebar like in Code 2, and we find each node here. But how do we make this spline show us anything? There isn't a oh god, what the hell did I do? Anyway, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be perfectly straight. So we got our spline. How do we make this into... what we're trying to do is just make it into a texture, basically. So you can see this window over here, properties, isn't really helping us. We can change some things like display name. We'll just call it spline 1. And you see, as soon as we click away, it adds. So we got spline 1 over here. Now the way to add something to your spline is you're going to actually have to go to the scenario tree, right click, add, and you have a list of things here. The ones I use the most are deform. This allows you to change the terrain along the spline, strip component, and wall component. What we want is a strip component. So we're going to add the strip component, and then you can see the properties for the strip component pop up over here. And we can also change the way this works. So you can change the name again as well. This is really great for organization. And see, we retitle this strip component. And then what we really want to focus on here is the blueprint. So this is how you actually add your texture to your spline. So you see kind of familiar folders here. What you're going to want to go for is not NMUI like in Code 2, but you want the gray box folder. And you're going to have default 2 and 4 meter roads of different colors. I'm going to stick with the conservative choice, go with the red that we were familiar with in Code 2, and all of a sudden I got my red spline here. It looks beautiful. And I'm just going to resize this here a bit. So what you're going to do with your spline here is I like to go adjust the width and tiling. You can adjust this to anything you want. You can adjust it to as low as like 1. Super skinny, right? I like to just hit right click and press reset. And then you can also do the same to the tiling. Right click, reset. Now you get a big fat spline that's easy to see. I'm probably going to adjust this down to like 8. It doesn't need to be as wide as 16. And I'm going to reset the tiling. So, you can figure out the inverse property here, right? Where your width is a certain value. You can match that ratio or just right click and do reset. And then we're going to set our 64 meter boundary here. Bring this to about the middle. Now, I'm one of the people where the exact kind of coordinates are really important for whatever reason. So right now, I've got my spline selected, and I can adjust over here in the transformation window where the entire spline is going to be lining up to. You have the x-axis. I can't remember the orientation, but you're doing X and Z, right? Your Y is going to be your vertical up and down axis. I'm just going to set that to 0. And then you see we're on 0. Now, the easiest way to do this is to make sure you have your spline selected. Sometimes you select the nodes and you don't realize it and you're only moving one node. I like to just select the spline. Right, and then what I'm doing, you have to navigate between windows. So you select the spline here with the middle mouse button. I click, so I have this window selected, and then I can press the space bar, right? If I, for example, notice the playback window here. If I select the spline and I go to hit space bar, it doesn't actually have the render window selected. So I've kind of learned the habit of always middle mousing over the render window. So I actually have that window active. Then I can hit spacebar, and I'm going to grab my point here, and I'm going to use these arrows to just move it on this axis so it stays on the 0 axis. Move it about there. I'm going to zoom in, get the other side, and I'm going to, sorry, my mouse is going, so I kind of just magically double click. I'm going to bring this all the way out here. Now, in Code 2, the super easy thing to do with your spline to duplicate it, right, is you Ctrl C left click and drag it. But as I'll show you here, that doesn't work. All that does is drag your spline that you carefully placed. So what you're going to do, you have 2 options. Your first option is to copy and paste, and it'll paste it here. Sorry, you have 3 options. Your second option is right click, paste in place, and it places your new spline exactly where your old one is, and you can just drag it to where you need it to be, right? And your third option, definitely the easiest, especially for single objects, you're going to have, all you got to do, left click, move, and you see sorry, I jumped the gun there with the mouse, but you're going to left click and you're going to scroll right over the object, and you see you've got that faded rectangle with the plus sign, and that means you're going to duplicate your spline in place. So you don't have to do the right click, paste in place. You just do a little click, a little move to get back on the object. Bam, got another spline. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to push it all the way out here. And then you can, with 2, you can actually duplicate it just that same way. And you're not going to get that little plus icon. So sometimes you do end up kind of rearranging your objects, your items here, instead of just duplicating them. And then you're going to select 2 of them. You're going to middle mouse on your window, so you have your render window active. And you're going to change the transformation method. So you're going to come down over here and you're going to hit rotate, or the E key, and you're going to just rotate this like you're familiar with in Code 2. You're going to left click on the circle here and drag, and if your mouse is not double clicking, you're fine. We're going to undo that so we get a nice 90-degree transformation. And you can always adjust this down here. Although your rotation, you see it's blank, blank, and 0. If you select 1, it's going to show you the exact value, but if you select 2, I don't think it shows you the same. If the values are different, it'll just be blank. So now we've got our perfectly square, more or less, map. And you can see we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, I did my math wrong. I added 2 on each side instead of 1. You guys probably caught that a long time ago. I'm just going to slide each one of these out. So we're just going to have a 32-meter border. Like I said, math isn't my strong suit, but to be honest, I've been trying to get those mini maps smaller. So I've been working on, getting even like a 16-meter border instead of a 32 or 64, just to make the mini map that much bigger. And am I doing my math right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes, this is what we want. And sometimes there's some weird bugs here, like this artifact. I don't think that's anything to be concerned about. It'll happen sometimes with these long splines. It'll eventually kind of go away like it just did there. But if you notice it's persisting, like this one, I might have messed up some of the control points. Sometimes if you do something wacky where you kind of overlay it back on itself, it'll do some weird stuff like that. Okay. Dang. I really slowed myself down here. Had all that momentum going. Oh, thanks, Fizu. I got the chat up in the top right of the other screen, so I'm not exactly looking at it. But yeah. Just ignore this. I don't know why it's doing it. It's annoying, but it's not actually... Everything's fine. But you've got your 10 by 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, and I guess the next thing is kind of figuring out where you want to put... I don't know. In my brain, I'm thinking, okay, which side is Axis, which side is Allies? So you just double tap backspace. This is your default camera view. So you might want to put, I don't know. You can change the camera, right? Usually it's supposed to be at an angle. Well, anyway. Over here, we've got player 1, player 2. So I'm going to retitle this spline. This is going to be Allies side, and this is going to be Axis side, just to help keep my orientation. I find, I make little mistakes here and there, and sometimes they're little, and sometimes you realize you made a little mistake a long time ago, and all of a sudden you're painting something you were not expecting to. So I've got our sides here. Painting the interactivity layer, you can go up here, interactivity map, and this will actually just show you your interactivity, but it won't allow you to paint it. Now, this is one of those things that I find is a little frustrating between Code 2 and Code 3, because you're also going to be diving into this terrain section here. So this is where you're going to find your grass, height map, impasse, interactivity. This is all duplicated from up here. And it's also sort of duplicated here with the icons. But remember, this is your overlay. So what we're going to do to paint interactivity, we just go here. This is your brush. The default is 0, so this is all 0. And I don't really know what the numbers do. For a multiplayer map, you just have like, you don't really need to, the numbers don't matter as far as I know. You just have 1. Let's make this 32 meters, and you can do square. Let's get that perfect grid. Now the easiest way to do this, it's a bit challenging because with the interactivity map, our 32 meter grid went away. The easiest way to do this is you're going to hold left shift and then paint, and you're going to paint, even though you wobble, it's going to paint in a straight line. And this is true of any painting tool. So if you want to make anything straight, whether it be the Heightmap, I'm trying to think what other things you paint, like grass, anything with the paintbrush tool, you just hold left shift and go. And even if it skips a bunch of frames and it bugs out on you, you just keep going, and assuming your PC is good enough, you won't crash, and everything's gonna be fine. See, that happened because the mouse is dying, double clicking. But see, there we have it. If our splines are a bit exactly straight, then this would be perfectly aligned. As you can see, the really great thing about the scenario tree with the splines, it gives you the nodes. So you see these are not exactly straight. There's like a 4 meter variance. And then, you're always going to have one axis be the same, right? So don't freak out when these numbers are all crazy, because these numbers are going to be what you want. Now to deselect any kind of tool you have that you've chosen from here to get back into kind of the normal mode, I'm going to go up here, deselect all. Now, because we selected our overlay, we have the interactivity overlay on, we're going to go over here and click none. And then this is going to bring our default view. Go back to grid lines. We have our grid. And then I'd say your next thing might be coming up with I don't know, like roads, river. Let's say, I haven't even thought of what kind of setting we want to do this, because we can choose like Italy or North Africa. I've been kind of leaning towards North Africa. I really I like the desert environment. It's cool. Something we haven't really seen before in an official game. So let's say we're gonna do like a North African kind of coastal area. Like maybe we're I don't know. We can even put in a railroad, because I think there's some railroad assets in here. But let's do a spline. Let's say we're by the coast, and let's kind of pretend that this whole top of the map is going to be water. Okay, so if we've made our spline, we're going to call this water edge. Okay, now remember, we're going to right click, add strip component. All right, and then it's nice that automatically makes this for you. If you click away and you want to edit the properties here, you just right click properties, and this will pop up. So blueprint, you want to pick your blueprint. We can go back to gray box and get our colors here, but I'm actually going to go back to the NMUI, and we're going to get a bunch of things, but you're going to find your trusty old dotted line right here. So we're gonna make this again 8 meter width, so it doesn't look too wacky. You're just gonna reset the tiling, and the tiling will always comes after the width. So whatever you set the width for, instead of I forget what it was called in code 2, but you'd kind of generate optimum width with the tiling. You just hit reset, and it generates the optimum. It doesn't generate the optimum width. I think that's definitely what the reset is down here. But you can set your own width, and it will generate the proper tiling based on the width. Okay. So let's say, from my experience looking at other maps, you don't have a perfect 10 by 10 square. You got a little bit of rocks or other impassable terrain cutting in the edge. So we're going to kind of cut in maybe a whole, 3/4 of the way through here. So I hit spacebar. I can faintly see these 4 spots here, the 4 nodes. I'm going to bring these out. I'm going to bring out this middle one as well. This isn't totally necessary. One good thing is that instead of having to go with the add to front, add to back buttons, you can just right click when you have a node selected and you'll generate another node. One thing I'm seeing now is that it's really hard to see the yellow circles when you're at any distance against this gray box. So I'm going to very quickly put a rough line out there. I'm going to bring this out to give it a bit of a curve so it looks not unnaturally straight. We're going to add a couple lines here. So this is going to be our water area. Going to make this a bit more of a smoother curve. And again, if you wanted to, you could be super specific about this and line up all of your values so you get the perfect parabola. If that's the way you want to do things, that's kind of the way I like to do things. Just to make sure things are symmetrical and balanced, you totally can. Or you can just kind of wing it. Because in the end, with the height editor, you're going to be kind of winging it anyway. So what I want to do, I want to get rid of this ugly tile. It's really hard to see anything besides the bright red lines. So what you're going to do to change your tiles, and it's been so long since I've used Ctrl Z editor, I can't remember the differences, but basically you're going to go down here to tile. You're going to go down. You're going to click here. This is your tile you have selected, GB Grid Light. It's nice that they named it after me. So right now you've got the painter tab open here, and you want to change your painter, your tile, but you've only got this. Don't got anything else. It was really frustrating for me at first. It took me a while to figure all this out, so I'm trying to, maybe I'm not the brightest, but it just, everything was new. It was overwhelming. You're going to want to go to properties. And this is what's going to let you choose a different blueprint. Okay. So you're going to go in here. It's going to bring you to this folder, Design Metrics. Go out of here. Go to Tiles. You don't need to worry about any of these folders as far as I know, because all of the tiles are here. So we've got a few things. I definitely stay away from campaign map. I think most things campaign map are the Italian campaign. So you have the scale is just way off. They're not really designed to be used in these maps. You can ignore debug, obviously. If you're doing Italy, you might want a dirt or grass. Some of the other things like leaves, obviously you wouldn't want a whole map of leaves. Maybe if you're doing an urban map, you do some in urban here, a lot of asphalt, brick, whatever. See, there's a lot of different textures. I'm going to look under, for a desert map, probably sand red, maybe stone natural, but I'm going to go with sand red. And basically, you don't have any way of previewing these images, which is unfortunate, or previewing the tiles. You just gotta start with what you like. You start from the top or whatever sounds nice. Desert rocks packed, desert slate red, desert stone red. But where's the sand? There really isn't. There's sand smooth. Let's start with sand smooth. And then this is going to change your tile. And, the details are actually really nice. Compared to Kotu, this is one thing I noticed. The tiles look way better. Especially at a higher resolution over 1080p. I know you're not getting the same effect on Twitch, but the detail is definitely there. But let's say we don't like this. We can always go back. Unfortunately, it starts you right at the top of this sand red folder, but we knew where we were. They are arranged alphabetically, so you can see we're sand red, so that's S. We remember we're at the very bottom. Okay, let's try. You want to choose the R material. These stylized mini maps. Oh, promotion for my channel. I think I'm not gonna go visit your website, bro. I am sorry. How do I delete this? Well, I'll just leave it. Thanks for chatting, probably bot. Yeah, so you want to avoid your stylized minimap material. This is what the game uses to make the minimaps. You want to go for the RR material. Because, for example, right, this just looks really flat. That's because that's what they use to auto-generate the minimap. So let's try Sand Smooth 2. Okay, this feels a little, I don't know. You can pick what you want. I think it's a little too tan for me. It's not really red. Sand Pebbles, let's try that. This is all right. You know, you could be here for 20 minutes and not know what you want. Let's try this Red Desert Redstone. No, that looks a little too... I definitely want to go with something that's more sandy. Let's go all the way back down where we were. Rocky Rough. Again, I think I was using this for like a part of like a river in another map I was using. Let's go with, oh god. Desert Rocks 01. How is this? I'm not really feeling any of these. Let's try Dirt Rocky. See, the naming's weird, right? This is in Sand Red, but we're Dirt Rocky 01. Nah, there's one I'm thinking of that's really nice. We have some alternatives, like this is Dirt Rocks 01A. No, sorry, that's not where we were. We were Dirt Rocky. See, it is confusing, right? They really do a good job of tricking you up. So this is Dirt Rocky 01, Dirt Rocky 02, but it's RR material, so this is a different texture than this one. Okay, I think I like this one. I like the red, I like the brown. It's different, nothing we've seen in Co before. It's not that Eastern Front tan. So now we've got our beautiful tile here. Ooh, okay, I'm gonna probably wrap this up in like 20 minutes. Maybe make a little YouTube video. What's important next? I deselect. I no longer have the tile thing open. Your Heightmap editor works about the same way as it does in Co 2. The only thing is you've got a couple of different things here. Basically, I just use the feathered tip sculpt brush, the set height brush, and then sample. These other ones I don't think are that important. One thing to note though, to sample height, you can't, this from your kind of default brush, your feathered tip, you can't directly click on sample height. You have to open the set height brush, and this allows you to set your height to, let's say, 15. So remember, our default height is 10. We're going to increase the size to 32. We're going to leave the feather at the same, and we got default height. You know, I can click again. It's not increasing. We're just setting the height. Now, if we wanted to sample this, it automatically brings us back to the set height brush, and we're back at 10, and we just paint over that. So that's kind of the super simple thing. And again, deselect all to get rid of that brush. What's the next thing we want to look at? I think the next thing is really the objects. So this is kind of our planning outline scenario. For objects, I'm going to put in, we're going to name this folder, check it as default parent, rocks. So this is going to be, let's say we're placing shot blockers. We're kind of figuring out our map flow. So we're going to go down here in the object browser, and we're going to go to, you'll be familiar with this if you've played Kotu before, right? We're going to EBPS environment. Very familiar, right? You got your bridges, buildings, other things, nature. Here's what we want, nature. One thing you'll notice is that in Co3, their blockers aren't trees. The blockers are mostly rocks. So if we go to groves, there's literally only one item here, and it's not even finished. So we're going to Ctrl Z, undo. We're going to go to Cliffs Rocks, and we're going to go to African set because we want the African set of rocks. These are the Italian kind of more luscious rocks. African set. Oh, and also, by the way, I learned to pan around the render window with the middle mouse button. It's just easier than going to your arrow keys. Middle mouse button here. And then I'm going to bring this up just to make it a bit bigger. Oh, that was too far. We don't need that much space. Okay. So to get a kind of a measure of things, you got African Cliff large. And the large ones all have this kind of color scheme, where they're this reddish rock with this kind of tan sandiness to it. And then they have another alternative color scheme, the variation or variant. That's the VAR suffix. And you can see they got a similar, different color sand and a bit more of a gray color there. And so you got these cliffs large. You got medium cliffs, which are a lot smaller, just to compare sizes. This is your large and your medium. Then you also have some small cliffs. And then 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 small cliffs. And I mean, they're not all cliffs, right? They're just, it's a little rock. You have some screes, and these are going to follow the same pattern with, they have the red and tan and the gray and tan kind of color scheme. Then you have two screes that provide cover. And here, just to confirm where I left click on this empty space, and it highlights the last object I was in, because as you can tell, these descriptions don't really tell you a lot, especially for buildings. They're all just the same name. So it helps to left click on the empty space and to see where you are. And you have this other, so again, this is the namings aren't consistent. You can see this is just cover 2. It really should have had the VAR suffix because it's that alternate color scheme. And then you have some small rocks, which are actually a lot bigger than some of the cliff versions. One important thing is that some of the cliffs and rocks serve as, they're functionally bridges. So for example, African Cliff Large 5 Walk. It has this green highlight here. And whenever you see this on an object, you'll see this on some bridges as well. This is traversable. I think it has to be roughly in line with the terrain. So you can see we just press H and we unlock the vertical axis. And then now it'll look really weird. Your units will literally kind of just teleport up the rock. I think they kind of use some of these bits as steps, but it requires some fine tuning, but it lets you build kind of natural bridges over like canyons and things like that. And there's a few other ones that serve as walkable. I think the second, maybe the first, no. There's a couple other here that serve as walkable. There we go. So this is African Cliff Small 04 and 05. These serve as walkable ones as well, but they're smaller. One last thing. Let's say African Cliff Large 1. Okay. You can see here, like in Co 2, you have the little grid of all the little meters it's taking up. One thing that's pretty common is that you'll actually scale these rocks, and they scale pretty well. So you can see over here, scale. The advice I got was to go plus or minus 0.5. So let's say we did this 0.5 scale. And you see we've scaled the rock down by half. And we're occupying less space here. However, if we go to the path map, and we're going to, right now it looks like it isn't occupying any space. We've got to regenerate the pathing. Now in Co 2 they had all these different regenerate pathfinding, regenerate this, regenerate that. It's just one button up here, and you're above your scenario tree in your window, regenerate all. And as you can see, it's now showing you what is impassable, but it's a lot bigger than this rock. And that's because there's currently a bug where the rocks, I think every object, maybe just the rocks, but with these rocks, their hitbox like doesn't change, even though the model changes. So if you're going to use these rocks, what you have to do, and you'll actually notice this if you open like Road to Tunis or any of the other desert maps, these actually are set to visual objects. So you're going to click on the object you want, right click all the way down, and you're going to hit to visual. And now all of a sudden you get this little eye notification. If I regenerate the path map, or regenerate all, you're going to see the pathing goes away. So now units can walk through this. But basically what this means is you're going to have to put blockers around the rock to prevent units from passing through. And I think actually that's a good segue into wall mode, because that's another function of the spline tool. So let's say we're going to call this folder spline blocker. So it's much the same as setting up your borders here. You're going to left click. Well, actually you don't have to do that. That just shows you the points. Right click, add, and you're going to want to put in a wall component. And you've got this selected. It brings up your properties here. And if you remember in the strip component, in the texture, they had a blueprint right here. But with the wall mode, it's different. You have to right click here, go to properties. No, that's wrong. Sorry, you have to right click here and press add. And you get an entity or a visual. So because we're adding blockers, you want to make sure they're entities, they actually block things. And then when you have the entity selected, you can go over here and add your blueprint. So compared to Co 2, this is going to take a lot of getting used to. You're clicking between different windows. It's complicated. I know it sucks, but the more you spend time in here and learn, the easier it's going to be. So for blockers, it's just like in Co 2. They're in the gameplay section. They have a great folder named blockers. What you're going to want to do is focus on, I think, these 6 or so objects. So you have move blocker, move and shot blocker, move shot sight. So because we have our glorious rock, we want to get a movement, shot, and sight blocker, because we shouldn't be able to see through it. We shouldn't be able to shoot through it. We want to totally block it off. And so, there's our spline. So the good change for blockers, Let's do it this way so we got the light. We're out of the shadow. Okay. And I forget, oh, this is our pathing map on. I'm going to turn this off. So as you can see, the blockers have changed. They're just visually intuitive. Instead of the big orange letters, you have your sight blocker, movement blocker, shot blocker. And if I was to say, change this to a move blocker, you'll see the icons are changed. It does kind of suck that you lose the rectangle, but you're seeing that same human icon. And you just saw me with my mouse over here, right? I messed up the workflow. I only have the spline selected. If I want to change the blueprint, I don't click on the wall component. I click on the actual entity here. Gonna go back. I'll show you the shot blocker. See, we got the shot, the shell, the flaming shell. We're gonna go back to our move, shot, and sight. And I guess, oh, these are other combinations, right? So you can do a sight and move blocker. And then also, I guess these are different sizes. I haven't tested them. These are the ones I've seen the most commonly used in the relic maps, although I haven't done a comprehensive study. So the easiest, kind of roughest way to get this done is just to, manipulate your spline like you would in Code 2. And like I said, you can just right click and add points. And of course, you want your spline to look a little pretty. It's probably better just to make 1 and half and then duplicate the spline. Let's do that actually. Oh, see, I'm doing Ctrl Z, but it's not working because somehow I've selected this. So if I go back here and then I put my mouse here on the render window, Ctrl Z. Okay, well, okay. That's challenging. Let's just select all these control points. So we're leaving 1, 2, 3, 4 intact. We hit delete, and then we've got this part of our spline. So let's kind of bring this around a bit more carefully. Right click. If there's a double click, this mouse is going. Let's bring this around. Probably delete that one actually. Bring this around. Bring this around. And then we want to hit spacebar to unselect the node editor mode in the spline. Then we're going to left click, move our mouse away, left click back on. We've got our duplicate spline here. You can see it's unchanging because it's literally occupying 100% the exact same space. Middle mouse clicking in the render window. I'm going to left click here, rotate 180 degrees. And if my mouse was not dying, this would be easy. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and adjust this here. And then you can further refine your splines here around your rock. I'm trying to think what else. I think I'm going to make a separate video about the specifics of competitive map. So that's like how much fuel and munitions, things like that. I'm going to make a separate YouTube video just after I finish the stream. I think that's really important, especially for the Master League map makers, just so they know to go back. So they recreate their maps, they make them balanced and fun to play, and they don't, actually give you too much fuel or too many munitions. What else? Ooh, I mean, there's so much to touch on. I've got a little note here on my phone about just random tips and tricks. Oh, okay. I know. So let's say we're going to, so we added this folder, right? And if we right click, we'll see that it's our default parent. We're going to deselect this. And then let's say we did it on accident. We didn't realize what we were doing. We go to place our African Cliff Large 05 right over here. And we get this window. It's basically asking us which folder do we want to place our object in. And we're going to say we're placing a rock, so we'll put it in our rocks folder. Now, does this change the default parent? It does change the default parent, so that's good. So now, any other item you place will, go in that folder like we want. Okay, so we have our rock here. It's walkable. That's not the important thing. The important thing is, let's say we're going to have another folder. Let's say we're going to say it's rocks 2. Maybe we have another section of our map where we're having rocks. So you can click and drag between folders, but especially at the end of your map, you look at the relic maps, this scenario tree is huge. They have so many items, so many objects, so many splines, splats, because everything in your map is going to be in these folders here. So let's go and Ctrl Z, move it back. So one thing you can do is if you want to move your object to a different folder, right, you do cut, and you can click on the folder you want to move it to, and you can do paste. And you see this paste it in a different location. If we want to paste it in the same place, we paste in place, and the rock goes back to its original location. All we're doing is moving folders, and it's a lot easier than trying to click and drag and scroll, and it's that's a hot mess. I'm trying to think what else is important. Yeah, another little keyboard trick here. We've got 2 items selected. We've got 3 items selected. If you want to deselect an item, instead of holding shift and left clicking, see it's still selected, we hold control. So it's a bit confusing because you can add like a single item holding control, kind of like the standard Windows procedure, where you hold shift and highlight them all. You can hold control to add in here, but on the render window you have to hold shift, and then you deselect by holding control and left clicking. That's just another random tip. Oh yeah, another great one. Let's say we want to move this somewhere else. We have it selected in the render window. We hold left control, left shift, and then we just left click, and it moves exactly where we want it to. We don't have to worry about dragging it along here, because like me, if your mouse is dying, you're double clicking all over the place. You don't have to worry about scrolling here. You just left control, left shift, left click. Okay, I am 40 minutes past my streaming time. Still got stuff to do tonight. Yeah, so thank you guys for tuning in. I'll make a record a few more things tomorrow tonight before launch, so they're up and ready for tomorrow and the weekend. Thanks for stopping by. I'll catch you later.